everyone, my name's Danielle and welcome to another episode of Board Game Bakes in our Halloween edition. This week we're going to do My Father's Work by Renegade Games, and look at this box. It's huge because it's a huge game that has so many beautiful components and it's app-driven, which I also love. So when I saw the cover, I just knew that I was going to recreate this some way, somehow, and guess what? I did it. So we're going to recreate it as a gingerbread house, and we'll use airbrush and fondant and Rice Krispies and pull out all the tricks to try and recreate this spooky scene from My Father's Work. Let's get started. That was lightning. Okay everyone, buckle up for an adventure. Let's start making a batch of gingerbread. Combine your dry ingredients in a bowl. To 3 cups of flour, add a 1/4 teaspoon baking soda, 2 teaspoons ginger, 2 teaspoons ground cinnamon, a 1/2 teaspoon allspice, 1/4 teaspoon salt, and give a quick mix. In a large bowl or the bowl of your mixing machine, add 6 tablespoons of unsalted softened butter and 3/4 cup of packed light brown sugar. Mix on medium speed until it forms a homogeneous paste, mainly so you don't see any clumps of butter anymore. Add in 1 large room temperature egg, 1 tablespoon of water, and a 1/2 cup dark molasses, and give it a quick mix. Slowly add in your dry ingredients and mix until a dough forms. Like when we're making sugar cookies, we're going to do a similar thing and divide the dough in half and let it chill in the fridge as a disc for at least an hour before attempting to roll it out. Okay, that was easy. And now repeat it 4 more times so you have 5 batches of gingerbread dough. Yes, this took 5 batches of gingerbread dough to make. I originally made 3 and that wasn't enough for this monstrosity. Once your dough is chilled, roll it to a 1/4 inch thickness and start cutting. To make my templates, I took a picture of the castle on the game box and expanded it on my computer so that it was 1 foot long on the side. I then created shapes that fit the pieces on my expanded form. It worked out pretty well. The other trick about making a large gingerbread structure is that you need to consider that your cookies need to cool on the baking sheets, and this makes them harder and more stable. So even if you have the dough, you need extra cookie sheets or to take a break between batches for the cookies to cool. Once you've filled your cookie sheet with cookies, bake them at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 to 18 minutes depending on the size. You could bake them a minute or so longer than you would usually because you want them to be a little harder and firmer. Royal icing is great and would work, but takes a long time to dry, which would just result in tears here. Lots of tears. So take 2 cups of sugar and put in a pan. Put the heat on low to medium and melt your sugar. No water or anything added, just sugar. Stir it as needed so that it doesn't burn, and eventually it will melt to a liquid. Now keep your burner on as low as possible without having your sugar starting to solidify. You're going to take a spatula, or if possible, dip the side of your piece into the caramel. Then you're going to bring it to your display board and hold it in place where you want it to go for about 30 seconds. And at this point, it should start to cool and it'll start to harden and it'll just stay there. Wow. So much easier than having cups stacked precariously all around the board, which I've definitely done before. This is a pretty good spooky house. But if I say haunted house, which one do you think of? For me, I kind of think of the Haunted Mansion at Disney World, but I was brainwashed by Disney. While you're here, make sure you subscribe to my channel for all sorts of fun board game treats. Thanks! Now to start our decorating marathon. That's right, this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. Start by coloring your roofs. Instead of using icing or airspray to color it, take some dark bluish gray fondant and roll it out very, very thin. I started with 1/8 of an inch thick, but this was too thick, so I just rolled it out using my regular rolling pin as thin as I could get it. You can use some of the cookie stencils that you use to cut out the actual pieces as a guide, or you can just do the rest by eye. Make strips for the different sides of your various roofs. Use your fingers to smooth the creases together and to make sure it's stuck onto the gingerbread. Royal icing or another form of glue shouldn't be necessary because as you work the fondant, it tends to get stickier. Step 1, check. Eventually you'll spray paint the walls, but instead of having to get the airbrush out multiple times, get the rest of your scene assembled. Since I left our gingerbread scraps and crumbs, I decided to put those to good use to make the road and part of the cliff. Put them in your food processor and pulse until you have fine crumbs. Add cream cheese chunks in and eventually they'll start to stick together. You could add more so that it makes more of a dough type consistency, or I stopped once I had crumbs starting to stick together. The cream cheese should not be at room temperature too long, so this is probably the one thing in this creation that you probably shouldn't eat. Take your crumbs over to your mansion and press them into a path coming from the bottom of your future stairs and add a little curve so it squiggles. Use all the extra bits as the rocks on the left side of the house. Squish, squish, squish. For the ground, make a quick batch of Rice Krispies. In a saucepan, add 3 tablespoons of butter and heat on low heat until it's melted. Add in 1 10-ounce bag of mini marshmallows and mix until all the marshmallows are melted and it just looks like one big blob. At this point, we're going to deviate from the recipe and add in some green and black to make a dark forest green color, so this way when we're airbrushing, we don't have to spray as much. Add in 6 cups of Rice Krispies and mix. Pour this very sticky mixture into a 13x9 pan, flatten it and let it set before trying to use it. So I made this batch a few days ago. To make it cover more of the board, I also put it on a cutting board and rolled out my rolling pin to make it a bit wider and thinner. Take off chunks and fill in around your path and around the castle. Add any of your leftover Rice Krispie bits onto the mountain you'd previously started to create with your gingerbread crumbs. Now we're ready to whip out that airbrush machine, because, if I'm being honest, right now it looks more like Hogwarts than a scary castle. So if you want to do Hogwarts, just stop here. Use your airbrush to give the walls a light gray coat, which is about 1 drop of black with lots of white. As a second coat, you could add more shadows and darker colors on the left side of the castle, and some lighter colors on the right, because if you look at the box, there's some shadowing, probably from the moon. Use some blue with a hint of black to outline the sides of your roof and to add some shadows. As a last touch, add some black to the rocks that you've put around using your Rice Krispies and gingerbread crumbs. And if you have silver, use it to put it along the border of the rocks and on the sidewalk to kind of create like a misty effect. Ooh, we're starting to get spooky. Next, there has to be a way to get into the house, right? Right. Roll out yellow fondant to create your windows and door. As you add them to your building, you could also add some lines and arches that are seen on the box. Use a ruler to put the lines on in brown, and then you could add some black royal icing to go under the lines and create the black windows. We're getting into more of the little details now. You could also use the black royal icing to outline part of the window. And then here's the tedious part, the very tedious part. Use a brown edible marker to add some lines, and this is supposed to represent the bricks because it's made of bricks. You could technically go through and fill the whole thing with bricks, but that would take a very long time, so I chose to add little chunks here and there that's supposed to give the illusion that there's more bricks there. As a final detail now, take your orange edible marker and put little curves along the side so this way you add some depth to your windows and your door. Take some little chunks of gingerbread that you have, and you're going to use some forest green royal icing to create some pine trees. Draw, 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 draw. I just made as many pine trees as I had little bits left. We also need to make some of the spikes that go on top of the house. So you take a piece of wax or parchment paper, draw a line with the spikes and a line going across. You have to let that dry overnight. Once all your pieces are ready, use some royal icing to attach the spikes and have your trees stay on your board. Ah! It's spooky! This house is definitely ready for Halloween. Are you? My creation is complete! It's alive! Oh no, it's not alive. But it is complete, and I love how it turned out. So thank you so much for staying with me till the end. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all of you that watch my videos. It makes all the time that I put into this well worthwhile. So what's your favorite part about Halloween? I have 2 little kids, so I must admit that I love watching them all in their cute little costumes, but let me know down below. Keep playing games and keep them sweet. Happy Halloween! Mwah.